Welcome to the second unit in our course on predictive analytics/machine learning. In this unit, as the title indicates, I'll give you an introduction to classification problems and many points and concepts related to classification problems. So just to get things straight, the first lesson is about what are classification problems. By now you clearly understand this, but I just want to establish it for now. So in a classification problem, all we are trying to do is to slot a case into a category. So for example, suppose we have information about a person, several attributes like age, education, income, marital status, etc. Okay. Now what we might want to do is to figure out if a person with these characteristics will buy our product or not. Okay. So all of the attributes that we know that we plan to use, we call them as predictor attributes. That is, based on the values of those attributes, we are going to make a prediction as to whether this person is going to buy or not. And therefore, that is talking about the status of the buyer, of the person, whether the person is going to be a buyer or a non-buyer. So that's a classical classification problem where you take a case and you just slot it into one of a small number of categories. Very often, you want to slot into one of two categories, but that's not required. It's possible that you may have 3 categories or even 10 categories. So in a general sense, what we're saying is, you're given a case, identify the category to which it belongs, right? So what we really are trying to do is to develop a procedure by which we can do this categorization. And that procedure, of course, is what we would call as a classification model, a predictive classification model. So again, just to clarify, we've got a case and you want to say that the case belongs to one of several categories. So let's take some examples of cases and categories. So for example, let's say the case may be a person and the categories to which we may want to classify the person might be buyer or non-buyer. Okay. Of course, I'm not again implying that for a person, these are the only categories we can try to put them into. This is just one example. Or you may have a credit card transaction, as we have seen many times. You may want to categorize the transaction as a fraudulent or a genuine transaction. Or you may have a patient and you may want to categorize the patient as either infected with a particular disease or not infected with a particular disease. Right? You may do that, for example, by performing certain kind of test or something. Or you may have a prospective student in the category in the context of a university, and you may want to categorize that student as a high, moderate, or a low performing student. Right? So this is before admitting the student, you want to make a prediction as to how the student is likely to perform if we admit the student to our university. So I just threw in this last example mainly to indicate that you don't necessarily need to have only 2 classes. You could have more classes than 2. I just showed an example of 3.